Ethan Cole stepped into the dim light of the alien restaurant. The place was alive with strange sounds, deep voices, hissing laughs, and the clink of glass cups. The air smelled of spices he had never known, sharp and sweet at the same time. He had been flying cargo ships for months without a real meal. All he wanted tonight was a simple, rare steak. Something warm and filling. The alien waiter. A tall creature with gray skin and 4 thin arms walked over slowly. Its eyes blinked sideways, studying Ethan from head to toe. Ethan smiled tiredly and said, "A rare steak. The juiciest you have." The waiter paused, then nodded silently. Before disappearing into the kitchen, Ethan leaned back in his chair, trying to relax. Other customers whispered and stared at him. He was used to being the only human in places like this, but tonight felt different. It wasn't curiosity in their eyes, it was something darker. The room's conversations quieted until only the sound of the kitchen door swinging could be heard. Moments later, the waiter returned, pushing a covered serving cart. Its wheels squeaked across the metal floor as it stopped in front of Ethan. The waiter's thin fingers gripped the handle tightly, as if afraid to let go. "Your order." "Human," it said in a low voice. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "This quick?" That's before he could finish. The waiter gripped the silver lid and lifted it slowly. Ethan's words caught in his throat. Inside the cart was not meat, not a plate. Not anything he had ever seen in a restaurant before. It was a girl. She was small, with silver hair falling over her face. Her wrists and ankles were chained, her skin pale with fear. Large violet eyes stared at him, wide and wet with tears. She wore torn fabric, barely covering her. And she shivered under the cold light. Ethan froze. His mind couldn't make sense of it. The waiter looked at him expectantly. "You asked for rare, human," it whispered. "Here she is." Still breathing, Ethan's stomach twisted in disgust. He pushed the cart away. "I ordered a steak, not this," he said sharply. The girl flinched at his voice, curling tighter into herself. Around the room, alien customers leaned forward. Some smirking, some muttering. A heavy-set alien with tusks grunted. Humans liked them fresh, and laughed. Ethan realized all eyes were on him. Waiting for what he would do, he lowered his voice, leaning toward the waiter. "What is this? Is this some kind of sick joke?" The waiter shook its head slowly. "She is yours now, part of the order, already paid for." Ethan's pulse quickened. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a setup. Someone wanted him to take this girl, to be seen with her, if he refused. Too loudly, maybe the wrong people would hear. If he accepted, he'd be just as guilty. The girl's eyes met his again, and this time he saw it clearly. She was silently begging him for help. 2 armored guards entered the restaurant. There, heavy boots thudding against the floor. They stopped by the door, scanning the room. The laughter died down. Replaced by a tense silence, Ethan's heart raced. He knew this wasn't going to end well if he stayed. He glanced at the girl, at the chains, at the guards moving closer. In that moment, he made a choice. He grabbed the cart's handles, shoved it back hard to break the waiter's grip, and turned sharply toward the side door. The girl gasped as the wheels rattled over the uneven floor. Shouts erupted behind him. The guards yelled for him to stop. But Ethan didn't look back. He burst into the narrow service corridor. The smell of oil and steam filling his nose. The dim lights flickered as he pushed the cart as fast as he could. The girl's chains clinked loudly. But there was no time to be quiet. He could hear boots pounding behind him, voices shouting orders. Somewhere above, an alarm began to wail. He didn't know why he was doing this, or how far he could get, but one thing was clear. He couldn't leave her there. Not like that. Not for them. The sound of pursuit grew louder. Ethan pushed harder, disappearing deeper into the maze of the station's back corridors. Ethan's Breath came fast as he pushed the cart through the narrow corridor. The sound of boots echoed behind him, each step louder than the last. The alien girl clung to the sides of the cart, her violet eyes wide with fear. She didn't speak, but her gaze said everything: confusion, terror, and the faint spark of hope. Ethan turned sharply, ducking into a storage room. The air smelled of metal and dust, and boxes were stacked high against the walls. He pulled the cart inside and shut the door, leaning against it for a moment. There was only the sound of both their breathing. The girl's voice trembled. They will come. They never stop. Ethan crouched beside her. Listen, I don't know what this is about, but I'm not here to hurt you, he said softly. She shook her head. They think you are. Like the others, they think you eat us. Ethan clenched his jaw. I ordered food, not this, he said, his voice tight with anger. Her eyes studied his face, searching for a lie outside. The sound of guards calling orders made the walls feel thinner. They were checking every room. The metal door rattled. Ethan quickly wheeled the cart toward the far side of the room. A small maintenance hatch sat low to the floor. Its bolts rusted. He grabbed a wrench from a nearby shelf and worked quickly. The bolts squealed as they loosened. The girl flinched at every sound. When the hatch opened, a rush of stale air hit them. The narrow tunnel beyond was barely big enough to crawl through. Ethan motioned for her to go first, but she hesitated. They will kill you for this, she whispered. Yeah, well, they'll have to catch me first, he replied. They crawled through the tunnel, the darkness pressing in around them. The chains on her wrists scraped the metal, echoing in the confined space. After what felt like forever, they reached a grate. Ethan kicked it loose, peering into another hallway. It was quieter here, lit only by a flickering red light. They climbed out, and Ethan pulled the grate back into place. The girl's legs trembled as she stood. What's your name? Ethan asked. Lyra, she said quietly. Her voice was weak, but her name carried a strange beauty. Before Ethan could say more, a sudden voice came from behind. Well, look what I've found. 3 aliens stepped from the shadows, armed with short blades and shock batons. Their leader, a scaled creature with glowing yellow eyes, grinned. That's a rare one you've got there, human, worth more than your ship. Ethan stepped in front of Lyra. She's not for sale. The alien laughed. Everything's for sale. Or for taking. They moved closer, surrounding him. Ethan's eyes flicked to the corridor behind them. No escape that way. The leader raised his baton. Ethan forced a smirk. You sure you want to do this? The alien tilted his head. Why? Wouldn't I? Ethan tapped the small device on his belt. Because I'm wired. And if I go up, so does this whole section of the station. It was a bluff, but he sold it with steady eyes. The aliens hesitated, exchanging uneasy looks. Finally, the leader snarled, Get off this level, human. Before we change our minds. Ethan didn't wait for a second warning. He took Lyra's hand and hurried past them. They kept moving until they reached a side door that led to the lower service decks. The air here was heavier, filled with the scent of fuel and machinery. The hum of engines vibrated through the walls. It was a place where station workers fixed ships and scrapped old parts. Most people avoided it because of the noise and heat. Ethan found a shadowed corner behind a pile of broken panels. Lyra sank to the floor, her breathing uneven. You didn't have to help me, she whispered. Ethan sat beside her. Yeah, I did, he said simply. Her eyes softened, but the fear in them hadn't faded. Somewhere above, the intercom crackled. All units. Be advised, human male, dark jacket, suspected abduction. Level 3 clearance Dayton on site. Ethan's stomach tightened. They've made me the criminal, he muttered. They will keep coming, Lyra said. They never let go of what they own. Ethan looked at her, not while I'm still breathing. He knew now that walking away was no longer an option. He had made a mistake by thinking he could just leave quietly. This was bigger than a meal gone wrong. This was about survival, and the galaxy was about to make him pay for it. The heat from the lower decks wrapped around Ethan and Lyra like a heavy blanket. Pipes hissed steam, machinery groaned, and the floor vibrated under their feet, somewhere far above. The sound of muffled announcements and booted steps echoed. Through the metal, Ethan knew the guards would sweep this area soon. They always worked in teams, and there was no way to hide forever. We can't stay here, he said quietly. Lyra's chained hands rested on her knees, her breathing still. Uneven. Where will we go? She asked. Ethan thought for a moment, scanning the shadows. There's a maintenance bay at the far end of this deck. We can reach it. I might be able to get us off the station. Her eyes widened. You have a ship? Not exactly, he admitted, but I know someone who might help. They began moving through the dim service tunnels, keeping low every few meters. Ethan would stop and listen. Sometimes there was nothing but the hum of the engines. Other times faint footsteps echoed, making him change direction. Lyra stayed close, her chains clinking softly with every step. The sound worried Ethan. It was like a bell announcing their location. He tried wrapping her wrists with strips of cloth from his jacket to muffle it. It helped, but only a little. They reached a large chamber where heavy crates were being moved by slow, spider-like cargo drones. The air smelled of oil and burnt circuits. Ethan pulled Lyra behind one of the crates as two uniformed workers passed. He caught parts of their conversation. Human with a girl. Bounty doubled. Warlord wants her alive. Ethan's jaw tightened. Whoever this warlord was, he had influence here. If the entire station was now looking for them, time was running out. They slipped past the workers and entered a narrow passage lined with pipes that dripped warm condensation. The heat made the air thick. Lyra's steps faltered. Ethan glanced back. You okay? She nodded weakly, but he could see she was struggling. The chains had rubbed her skin raw, leaving faint bruises. He slowed his pace, trying to give her a moment, but a sudden metallic clang echoed from behind them. Someone had opened the hatch. They'd come through. Ethan grabbed her hand, pulling her forward. They ran through the twisting passage until they reached a ladder that disappeared upward. This way, he said. Starting to climb, the ladder rattled under their weight. From below came the sound of voices. Closer now, halfway up. Lyra's foot slipped on the worn metal rung. Ethan caught her arm just in time. Don't look down, he whispered. They climbed faster until they reached a hatch at the top. Ethan shoved it open, pulling her through. They found themselves in a dimly lit storage loft above a massive hangar. Below, Ethan could see rows of old ships, most of them half disassembled for scrap. The smell of fuel and rust filled the air. It was quieter here, but that wouldn't last. He spotted a figure moving near one of the larger cargo haulers. A tall, thin alien with a welding torch. Ethan recognized him instantly. Core, he called softly. The alien looked up, lowering his torch. His four eyes narrowed, then widened in surprise. Ethan. What trouble are you in this time? Ethan climbed down the ladder with Lyra following carefully. I need your help, and fast, Ethan said. Core's gaze moved to Lyra, lingering on the chains. His voice dropped. You brought her here. Do you have any idea who's looking for her? Ethan nodded. That's why we need to get off this station before they find us. Core looked around nervously. You can't just walk her out. Every scanner will pick her up. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Then we hide her. Core hesitated. Glancing toward the hangar doors, they've already locked down most exits. Maybe. He led them toward a battered cargo freighter tucked behind a pile of scrap. Its hull was scarred, paint peeling, but it looked space-worthy. She could hide inside the smuggling compartment, Core said. But you'll need to wait until I disable the security grid. Ethan nodded, helping Lyra into the freighter. Inside, the compartment was cramped, but at least it was hidden from scans as Core worked. Ethan stood watch near the hangar entrance from his position. He could see movement in the shadows, 3 figures slipping in quietly. His heart sank. The bounty hunters had found them. Core, we have company, Ethan said sharply. Core cursed under his breath and moved faster, sparks flying from his tools. Ethan pulled his blaster from its holster. The first bounty hunter stepped into the light, a tall insectoid with long, curved blades for arms. It hissed, "Hand her over, human. And maybe you walk away." Ethan didn't answer. The second hunter, a reptilian with heavy armor, circled to the left. The third, a lean, furred predator, moved to block the exit. They were trying to box him in. Behind him, Lyra's voice called softly, "Ethan." He glanced back and saw her peering out from the freighter's hatch, fear written on her face. "Stay down," he ordered. The insectoid lunged, blades flashing in the dim light. Ethan sidestepped and fired. The shot hitting a fuel drum and sending flames leaping into the air. The hunters scattered for cover. "Core, now. K-suit now," Ethan shouted. With a final spark, Core yanked a cable free. "The grid's down, get in." Ethan dashed for the freighter, pulling the hatch closed behind him. The engines roared to life, rattling the deck beneath their feet. As the ship lifted, bounty hunters fired wildly. But their shots sparked harmlessly off the freighter's shields. The hangar doors split open just enough for them to squeeze through. Outside, the endless black of space stretched before them for the first time that night. Ethan felt a flicker of hope, but deep inside, he knew this was far from over. The freighter shuddered as it cleared the hangar doors. Stars stretched out across the black void, cold and endless. Ethan gripped the pilot's controls, pushing the ship away from the station as fast as the old engines would allow. Behind them, the station's lights grew smaller, but the danger didn't. He knew bounty hunters would already be launching after them. Lyra sat strapped into the co-pilot's chair, her eyes wide as she stared at the streaks of distant starlight. "Are we safe?" she asked softly. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. They won't give up so easily." Core stood behind them, scanning the radar. A low beeping sound made his face tighten. "They're coming," he said. 3 small dots appeared on the screen, moving fast. Bounty hunter ship, sleek, armed, and far quicker than the old freighter. Ethan cursed under his breath and adjusted their course. "They'll try to cut us off before we can hit hyperspace." Core tapped the console. Pulling up a star map, there's a debris field 2,000 clicks ahead. "If you can lose them in there, maybe we have a chance." Ethan's hands tightened on the controls. Flying through a debris field was dangerous, but not as dangerous as getting caught. The hum of the engines deepened as he pushed them harder. Behind them, the bounty hunters were gaining. One of the ships fired a warning shot, a burst of plasma that lit up the darkness. It missed, but only barely. Lyra flinched, her hands gripping the straps across her chest. "They want me," she whispered. Ethan glanced at her. "Then they're going to have to get through me first." The debris field loomed ahead, giant chunks of old warships, shattered hulls, and floating metal twisted into jagged shapes. The remains of some forgotten battle. Ethan angled the freighter toward the narrowest gap he could see. The hull groaned as they entered. Shadows and light flickered across the cockpit as massive wrecks drifted around them. The bounty hunters followed, weaving between the metal giants. "They're still on us," Core said, his voice tense. Ethan banked sharply, skimming so close to a broken destroyer's hull that the shield sparked against it. One wrong move, and they'd be torn apart. The first bounty hunter ship closed in, firing again. The shot slammed into the freighter's rear shields, making the lights flicker. Core shouted, "Shields at 60%. Ethan gritted his teeth, jerking the ship into a sudden dive. The Hunter overshot, smashing into a drifting cargo pod and exploding in a burst of fire and shrapnel. Lyra gasped, but Ethan kept his focus. To left, he muttered, the second Hunter's ship broke off, swinging around to flank them. It tried to herd them into a dead end of wreckage. Ethan spotted the trap just in time, rolling the freighter sideways and slipping through a gap barely wide enough for the wings. Metal scraped the shields, the sound like nails on steel. The third Hunter fired a missile, the trail of light racing toward them. Ethan yanked the controls, sending the ship spinning around a giant engine core. The missile hit the wreck instead, tearing it apart in a flash of debris. But the Hunters weren't done. The second ship locked on again, firing in rapid bursts. The freighter rocked under. The impacts, alarms blaring, Core shouted from the back, "We can't take much more of this." Ethan's mind raced. He needed to buy time, just a few more seconds. "Lyra, hold on," he said, his voice firm. He dove the ship deeper into the debris field, toward a massive, cracked battleship drifting in silence. They slid into a gash. In its hull, entering the hollow interior, the Hunters hesitated outside. Wary of the cramped space, Ethan killed the engines, letting the freighter drift into the shadows inside. The only light came from faint reflections off the walls. Everyone held their breath through the forward viewport. Ethan could see the Hunters circling outside like predators waiting for prey to emerge. Core whispered, "They'll wait us out. They know we can't stay here forever." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we don't wait. We hit them first." He powered the engines back on, surging forward through another gap in the wrecks. Side, the Hunters scrambled to react, but Ethan came out behind them. Weapons already armed, he fired, hitting the second ship's engines, sending it spinning into the debris. The last Hunter fired back, scoring a hit on their wing. The freighter shook violently, warning lights flashing red. "Jump, now." Core shouted. Ethan didn't hesitate. He slammed the hyperspace lever forward. The stars stretched into long white lines, and then the blackness of deep space swallowed them whole. The cockpit fell silent except for the hum of the drives. Lyra let out a shaky breath. "We made it," she asked. "For now," Ethan replied, but he knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere out there, the warlord who wanted Lyra was already planning his next move, and Ethan had just painted a target on his own back. The freighter drifted in the silent tunnel of hyperspace. Blue and white streaks of light shimmered outside the cockpit window, giving the illusion of safety. But Ethan knew better. Safety was only temporary. He kept one hand on the controls, the other drumming against his leg, his mind still running through the last battle. They had escaped, but at a cost. Shields damaged, fuel low, and a warlord now furious enough to send more than just bounty hunters. Core sat in the co-pilot's seat, working on a cracked console with a small toolkit. Lyra sat quietly behind them, knees pulled to her chest, her silver hair falling forward. To hide her face, Ethan glanced back at her. "You haven't said much since we jumped," he said, her violet eyes lifted to meet his. And there was something heavy in them. "There's something you need to know," she whispered. Core paused. His work, looking over his shoulder. "What kind of something?" he asked cautiously. Lyra's fingers tightened around the chains still on her wrists. "I wasn't just taken for what you think," she said, her voice trembling. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her expression. "Then tell us," he said, his tone calm but firm. She hesitated, as if the words themselves were dangerous. "My people. We are healers," she began. "Our blood. It can cure almost any illness, close wounds, even stop death if given in time." Ethan frowned. "That's not possible." Core shook his head slowly. "No, I've heard of this, Ethan. A few traders talk about a species like hers. But most believe it's a myth. Lyra's eyes darkened. It's not a myth. It's why my planet was invaded. The air in the cockpit felt heavier. Ethan leaned forward. So that warlord. He wants you because of this ability. Lyra nodded. To him, I am not a person. I am a fountain of life he can use for himself, his army, and anyone who pays him enough. Her voice cracked at the last words, but she didn't look away. Ethan felt a slow burn of anger rise in his chest. They're not going to get you back, he said firmly, but Lyra's expression stayed grim. They always find us. Kor set his tools down, his face more serious than Ethan had ever seen. If this is true, then we're in far deeper trouble than I thought, he said. The kind of credits a warlord could make from her. It's enough to make half the sector hunt us. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then we make it too hard for them to follow. Lyra's gaze softened, but there was still fear in it. You risk your life for me, but you don't even know me, she said quietly. Ethan met her eyes. I know enough, he replied, but inside he knew there was truth to her words. He didn't know her past, her family, or even if she trusted him. He only knew that leaving her behind had never been an option. Kor cleared his throat, breaking the tension. Where do we go now? He asked. Ethan thought for a moment, staring at the swirling lights. Outside, there's an old refueling station on the edge of the outer belt. It's off-grid, no official records. Kor frowned. That place is crawling with smugglers. You really think we can trust anyone there? Ethan smirked faintly. No. But I think they'll trust our credits. Lyra shifted in her seat, her voice low. What if I use my ability to help someone there in exchange for protection? Ethan shook his head immediately. That's the fastest way for your secret to get out. And once it does, every pirate, merc, and bounty hunter will be after you. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then what? Hide forever. Ethan didn't answer right away. Silence settled over the cockpit, broken only by the faint hum of the engines. A sudden beep from the console shattered the quiet. Kor checked the radar screen and cursed. We've got a tracker signal. Someone planted a beacon on the ship. Ethan's hands flew over the controls. Pulling up the ship's internal scan, the screen lit up with a blinking red dot, hidden deep in the cargo hold. Stay here, Ethan said, standing quickly. He moved through the narrow corridors, his boots clanging softly against the metal floor. The cargo hold was dim, lit only by a single overhead lamp. He followed the signal to a small panel near the back. When he pried it open, he found the tracker small, sleek, and still warm from use. He yanked it free and returned to the cockpit. Kor took one look and muttered, "That's military tech. No wonder they've been on us so fast." Ethan powered up the airlock and tossed the tracker into hyperspace. It tumbled away into the void, disappearing into the endless streaks of light. Won't stop them forever, Kor warned Ethan. Nodded, but it buys us time. Lyra's gaze lingered on him. You could have left me back there. But you didn't, she said softly. Ethan met her eyes. Yeah. And I'm not planning to start now. For a moment, neither of them looked away. Kor cleared his throat again, a hint of a smirk on his face. Ethan turned back to the controls. Next stop the outer belt, he said. But deep down, he knew every jump they made was only pulling them deeper into a fight they couldn't avoid. The freighter dropped out of hyperspace with a jolt. The swirling blue tunnel of light vanished, replaced by the cold darkness of space ahead. The outer belt stretched like a massive wall of drifting rocks, shattered moons, and frozen asteroids. It was a dangerous place many ships entered, but few came out. Ethan stared at the chaotic field and gripped the controls tighter. Kor leaned over his shoulder, scanning the readouts. No stations nearby. Except one, he said, pointing at a faint signal on the edge of the field. That'll be the refueling post, Ethan replied. Lyra sat quietly in the co-pilot seat, her eyes fixed on the jagged rocks floating ahead. "It looks like it could crush us," she said softly. Ethan gave a faint smirk. "Only if I miss." As the freighter approached, the station came into view, a rusting, circular platform clinging to an asteroid side. Its lights flickering, small ships were docked around it, most patched together with mismatched parts. This was a place where no one asked questions unless they could profit from the answers. Ethan guided the freighter into one of the docking ports, the ship's hull scraping against the magnetic clamps as they locked in place. The airlock hissed open, and a wave of stale, recycled air filled the cabin. Ethan turned to Lyra. "Stay close to me, no matter what," he said firmly. She nodded, but her hands tightened on the straps of her tattered clothing. Kor led the way through the narrow docking tunnel, his 4 eyes scanning every shadow. The station interior was dim, with flickering neon signs and the hum of old machinery. Rough-looking aliens lounged against walls, their eyes tracking the newcomers. A broad-shouldered reptilian stepped forward, blocking their path. "Docking fee," it growled. Ethan handed over a few credits without argument, better not to draw attention. They continued deeper inside until they reached a small, cluttered control room at the far end. Inside sat an old, one-eyed alien with a cybernetic arm. He looked up from his console, his voice gravelly. "Ethan Cole." "Been a long time." Ethan gave a short nod. "Need fuel? Supplies? And maybe a clean transponder code." The alien smirked. "Clean codes cost more than your ship's worth. Unless you've got something better to trade." His cybernetic. I swiveled toward Lyra, lingering for a moment too long. Ethan stepped between them instantly. "She's not for trade," he said coldly. The alien chuckled. "Relax. I'm not stupid enough to cross whoever's hunting her. But you better get off my station fast." Before Ethan could respond, a warning klaxon blared through the station. Kor checked a wall monitor. 3 fast-moving ships were approaching from the edge of the belt. Bounty hunters, they found. "Us already," Kor muttered. Ethan's mind raced. The freighter wasn't fast enough to outrun them in open space. The only way to escape was to use the asteroid field itself. It was risky. But staying here meant certain capture. Ethan turned to the station master. "I'll pay double the fuel rate if you can get us out in 2 minutes." The alien snorted. "You've got one." Ethan and Kor sprinted back to the freighter, Lyra running close behind. The station shook as the first bounty hunter shots hit the outer hull. Inside the cockpit, Ethan fired up the engines. The old freighter groaned, but the power surged through its systems. The docking clamps released, and Ethan shot the ship away from the station. Behind them, the 3 bounty hunter ships broke formation, moving in for the kill. Lyra gripped the armrest, her knuckles white. "They're faster," she said, her voice shaking. Ethan nodded. "Which is why we're going where they won't dare follow." He angled the freighter into the asteroid field. Weaving between tumbling rocks the size of buildings, the bounty hunters followed, their weapons flashing in the darkness. One of the shots grazed the freighter's side, sending sparks across the console. Kor shouted over the noise, "Shields at 40%. Ethan pushed the ship harder, dipping under a spinning boulder and skimming along its surface. A pursuing hunter wasn't fast enough. Wing clipped the rock, spinning it out of control before exploding. To left, Ethan darted through a narrow gap between 2 colliding asteroids, the freighter's hull screaming in protest. The hunters tried to follow, but one hesitated, taking a longer route. Only one ship stayed close, firing relentlessly. Lyra's eyes locked on Ethan. "What are you doing?" she asked. Ethan's voice was steady, but grim. "Making sure they don't get a second chance." He pulled up the asteroid map and spotted a massive dip his eyes. A massive, pouring rock ahead. Its surface cracked and glowing faintly from internal heat. If he could time it right, He could use it against the remaining hunters. "Hold on," he shouted. The freighter skimmed dangerously close to the asteroid's surface. The pursuing ship followed, until Ethan fired a single shot into one of the glowing cracks. The asteroid shuddered, then erupted in a violent explosion of molten rock. The shockwave tore through space, smashing into the hunter's ship and ripping it apart. The last bounty hunter, still trying to catch up, saw the wreckage and pulled back, disappearing into the belt. The freighter emerged from the chaos. Battered but intact, inside the cockpit, the only sound was the heavy breathing of its crew. Lyra looked at Ethan, her voice soft but certain. "You risked everything." For me, Ethan glanced at her with a faint smile. "That's what I do, but deep inside." He knew the warlord wouldn't stop. This victory was only a pause in the hunt, and the next move would have to be theirs. The asteroid field was far behind them now. The freighter floated through the still black of open space, its engines running low to avoid drawing attention. The damage from the chase was clear scorched hull plating, flickering lights in the corridor, and a constant hum from the overworked shields. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. It was quiet. Too quiet, and in that quiet, the weight of everything they had risked began to sink in. Kor was in the engine room. Patching up what he could with the scraps they had left, Lyra stood at the viewport, her silver hair catching the faint light. From distant suns, her hands were still bound by the thin chains, but they hung loosely now, a symbol more than a prison. She turned her head slightly, her voice soft. "You could have left me." Back at the restaurant, back at the station, even in the belt, Ethan didn't look away from the stars. "Yeah," he said, "I could have." "But you didn't," she said, almost like she was still trying to understand why Ethan. "Leaned back in the chair because I know what it's like to have no one." His voice was calm, but there was something deep under it, a quiet hurt. Lyra studied him for a long moment, then asked, "Who did you lose?" Ethan's eyes flickered with memory. "My crew. Years ago, a job went bad, and they didn't make it." Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. She finally said, "Then maybe we both know what it means to be taken." From everything, the cockpit door slid open and Kor stepped in, wiping his hands. "Engines are stable. For now," he said, "but we can't keep running like this next time they catch us. It might not end so well." Ethan nodded. "I know. We need somewhere safe, at least for a while." Kor crossed his arms. "You're talking about disappearing. But there's no disappearing from a warlord's reach." Before Ethan could answer, a faint beep came from the console. He leaned forward, checking the scanner. A single ship was trailing far behind them. Small, unarmed, and keeping its distance, another bounty hunter. Lyra asked quickly. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "No. Too small for that." He adjusted the magnification, and the image sharpened a civilian shuttle. Limping along with one engine barely running, it was sending a weak distress signal. Kor groaned. "Tell me you're not thinking about answering that?" Ethan was already changing course. "They're in trouble." "And I don't ignore trouble." Lyra tilted her head. "That's exactly why you're in this mess." "Yeah," Ethan said, "and I'd make the same choice again." As they approached, the shuttle's details became clear. Its hull was scarred like it had been through a fight inside. Faint heat signatures showed life. Ethan brought the freighter alongside and opened the com channel. "This is the freighter Drift Runner. You need help?" A shaky voice replied, "Yes. Fuel's almost gone. Life support failing." Without hesitation, Ethan extended the docking clamps. The airlock connected with a soft clang, and moments later, the shuttle's hatch opened, too. Alien children stumbled out first, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Behind them came a thin, alien woman, limping badly. Lyra's expression shifted instantly, her healer's instinct pushing forward. She stepped toward the woman. "Sit. Let me see your leg." Ethan watched as Lyra knelt and pressed her fingers gently to the wound. A faint silver glow spread from her touch, and the torn flesh began to knit together. The woman's eyes filled with tears. I thought I would never walk again," she whispered. Core shot Ethan a look that said, "You see the problem? That ability." It was impossible to hide forever, but Ethan also saw the relief in the woman's face and the way the children clung to her. He knew Lyra's gift was more than just a reason for others to hunt hurt, was something that could save lives. And in that moment, he decided something. When the family was settled in the spare cabin, Ethan found Lyra in the corridor. "You?" "No, they'll tell people what you did," he said. She nodded. "I know. But I couldn't just watch them suffer." Ethan gave a faint smile. "Guess we're alike in that way." Our eyes softened. "Then, maybe." "I'm not alone anymore," the drift runner continued through the silent dark. Its course unknown, but its crew united by something more than survival. They were fugitives, hunted and outnumbered. But they were also together. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt like that might be enough. Still, he knew the warlord wouldn't stop. Somewhere out there, ships were already being armed, hunters already being paid. The price of Lyra's freedom had been set. And Ethan was ready to pay it no matter what it cost.